Some of you may be wondering how I spent my freshman year, and if that would be a good example to follow. I'll start by saying, no, my freshman year was not a good example to follow, and it won't be applicable to many of you for a few big reasons. First, in my first quarter, I hadn't quite honed my study strategies. I actually pulled my first and last all-nighter while studying for a final, and I ended up with a 3.77 GPA that quarter. I was not happy about that, and you can and should do better. At the beginning of my second quarter, I got diagnosed with Crohn's colitis during my first acute fulminant flare. I was hospitalized, I missed a couple of weeks of school, and my life was forever changed. And just when I thought that was bad enough, 2 months later, at the beginning of spring quarter, while I was still deep in recovery, my family life imploded. My parents split, and I moved into a one-bedroom apartment with my mom and older brother. I hope that you have an eventful freshman year, but not in the same way that I did. The end of my freshman year and moving forward for the rest of my college career, I had things dialed in. I was setting the curve in most of my classes, and I maintained 4.0 GPAs each quarter. And I think there's a lot to learn from that point onward, but we'll get to that in future sections of the course. For freshman year, I wasn't a good example to follow. So let's take a look at a hypothetical student, George, who follows the advice in this course and is absolutely crushing his freshman year at university. It's the beginning of college, and George understands that college is going to be a massive transition. He doesn't take it lightly. He wants to do things right, both setting himself up for success in being a future doctor, but also having an awesome time in college, forming lifelong friendships and timeless memories. When he starts freshman year, he's got his priorities straight. He wants to get straight A's, but he understands that being a top performer doesn't require one to forego a balanced life. He spends considerable time and effort in the first few weeks attending the social events, meeting different groups of people, and finding peers that he enjoys hanging out with most. He still errs on the side of caution and would rather study too much than party too much, understanding that the overwhelming majority of students tend to do too much of the latter and not enough of the former. There's a lot of peer pressure to socialize over study, and he's aware of this, but stays true to his plan. He's also mindful that just because someone is fun, it doesn't necessarily mean they should become your best friend. He knows that some people, particularly those that aren't pursuing a competitive career like medicine, have more leeway in indulging in the social aspects of college. George is not afraid of being known as the guy that works hard and studies hard, because in the grand scheme of things, he has his priorities straight. A little bit of teasing here and there about him studying too hard isn't going to ruin him or his reputation. Again, not a workaholic and still having fun, but not going overboard with the socializing either. He watched the Med School Insider's YouTube channel, and he's implemented all of the study strategies there, including active recall with spaced repetition, Anki, interleaving, desirable difficulties, practice questions, and more. He uses Pomodoro, whereby he sets a timer for 25 minutes, chooses one task, and works on it intently without distraction. This helps him to ward off procrastination, stay focused, and decrease the activation energy of getting started studying. He also uses the Feynman technique for the occasional group study session with his friend Linda. He and Linda don't always study together, but rather a couple times per week. They tried having another friend or two join them, but they quickly learned that doing so is often more distracting than helpful, so they've decided just to study between themselves for now. George is pre-med and knows he wants to be a doctor, but in terms of his major, he isn't quite sure yet. Nothing has truly captivated him. That's okay though, since at the beginning of college, he knows that he needs to tackle his medical school prerequisite courses and GEs. As long as he decides by the end of his second year, in preparation for his upper division courses, he'll be fine. Beyond class, George understands the importance of diet and exercise and living a balanced life. He isn't afraid to indulge in tasty foods, but he mostly goes to the dining commons and always makes sure he eats at least one big salad with lunch and with dinner. Eating at the dining commons gives him the chance to hang out with friends. It's close to his dorm, so it doesn't take very much time, and he saves on money because it's relatively cheap. He also has a routine of going to the gym and doing weight training with 2 of his floor mates. The accountability and group aspect helps him stick with the habit, which he knows he would otherwise struggle with. He is interested in dabbling with some sports clubs and intramural teams, but he is cautious not to bite off more than he can chew. After all, this is his first semester at college. Maybe he'll check it out next semester when he's a bit more situated in his own routine. Not one to miss out on all the fun, George makes sure he has adequate time on the weekends to let loose. He attends parties every Friday, and while he studies on Sunday, he makes it a point to take Saturdays off to hang out with his floor mates and newfound friends. Note that George isn't a workaholic, he's not super stressed, and he isn't fretting all the details. He's building a solid foundation early on in his college career. He's socializing, but at the same time, he isn't letting the target of becoming a stellar medical school candidate get out of sight.